All right. Welcome to Creekside Book by Book. And we are in the book of Numbers. And over the last couple of weeks, the people of Israel have moved up toward the promised land. And so last week they were trying to get in through Edom, and the king of Edom said no. And so they're going up along this long route to come down from the north. And so they fought two battles and they won. They started to settle into the region a little bit, but they're still on the east side of the Jordan River. And today we're going to see a shift in the narrative away from the people of Israel, focusing on Moses and their experiences, and moving towards the effect that the people of Israel are having on the nations that are there, and specifically the Moabites, because the Moabites are the king is getting nervous, as we'll see in the text, about the size of this nation that's walking through the land, and going to try to build a coalition of people to fight against them. But first, he's going to try to hire a prophet to curse them. And so this is the third time on the journey that we know that they stopped. And so they stopped at Sinai, and then they went up to Kadesh, and they were there for a while, Kadesh Barnea, and then they wandered. And we don't get a ton of information for that 40 years of wandering, but now we are getting into the land and heading that way. So Numbers 22, we're going to go through 22, 23, 24, and 25. So we're going to have 4 chapters tonight. And so let's jump to this. Verse 1, then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. Pause right there. Jericho is going to be the first battle in the land that they promised. So this is really where they're going to be for a while until they cross over into the promised land. Now Balak, son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, "This horde is going to lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field." So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at the time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was at Pethor near the Euphrates River in his native land. Balak said, "A people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the land and have settled next to me. Now come and put a curse on these people, because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed." The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them the fee for divination. When they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak had said. "Spend the night here," Balaam said to them, "and I will report back to you with the answer the Lord gives me." Pause there for real quick. The Lord here, if you're reading in the NIV translation, is in capital L and a little smaller, but a capital O-R-D. And remember, that is a sign of the divine name, Yahweh, here in the Hebrew text. And so Balaam is seeking the Lord, Yahweh's guidance on this, which is interesting. It's what's going on there. That's an interesting thing. So the Moabites officials stayed with him. God came to Balaam and asked, "Who are these men with you?" Balaam said to God, "Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. A people that has come out of Egypt covers the face of the land. Now come and put a curse on them for me. Perhaps then I will be able to fight them and drive them away." But God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people, because they are blessed." The next morning, Balaam got up and said to Balak's officials, "Go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." So the Moabite officials returned to Balak and said, "Balaam refused to come with us." Then Balak sent other officials, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. They came to Balaam and said, "This is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me." But Balaam answered them, "Even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in the palace, I could not do anything, great or small, to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now spend the night here so that I can find out what else the Lord will tell me. That night God came to Balaam and said, since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you. All right. So Balak, king of Balaam, is getting the Midianites and trying to build a little coalition. And so these are, neighboring kingdoms that are afraid of what Israel will do. And one of the things that they're doing here is they see the danger of Israel. And one of the key terms here is ra'ah in Hebrew, and it means to see. And so we're going to see some playing with that word as Balaam is a seer. And he will, in a moment, fail to see what he needs to see. But even Balak's strategy, he's trying to help. Later, he'll try to help Balaam see the people from different angles, thinking maybe that's going to help affect his oracles against Israel. So we come back and forth with the seeing motif and language throughout this section. And this section is often called the Book of Balaam in the middle of Numbers here. It's not that Balaam wrote this, but somehow we have this account. And so later on, we'll see that they do capture Balaam. And so they may have interrogated him. They may have asked, who are you? What are you doing? Somehow word of this gets to Moses and the people of Israel to capture it into the book of Numbers. So so the people of Moab see Israel and they're filled with terror. And so let's talk a little bit about Balaam. Balaam is a character that is in the Bible, and he is a diviner, a seer, a soothsayer of sorts. And his name appears in other documents outside of the Bible. In 1967, this is where I'm going to just read some of this. In 1967, a Dutch archaeological expedition led by H.J. Franken discovered some inscribed pieces of plaster at a site in the Jordan known as Deir Allah. The fragments are apparently written in Aramaic and date about 850 BC. They mention Balaam, son of Beor, the same figure described as a seer in Numbers 22 through 24. Although the text is very fragmentary with many breaks and uncertain words, it can be established that Balaam was a seer who received a divine message during the night, and that his message was not what his neighbors expected to hear. And so this is an extra biblical account showing that other people outside of the Hebrew people were talking about Balaam. And it could be that his notoriety throughout the region was so much that people were talking about it. Somehow Balak heard about him. And so Balak reaches out to Balaam. He sends representatives, and where Balaam lives is like Syria, northern Iraq area, right on the Euphrates River. It's essentially the area of Babylon. That Babylonian Empire is going to be in that area. And this is also where Abraham comes from. He is from that area of the east, of the Chaldees. And so he's not far from Abraham's region. So Balak has heard of Balaam. He's a powerful soothsayer. He's a person who has a reputation for effective curses. So he is willing to pay any expense because they've heard about what the Lord has done for the people of Israel with the miracles and the power that he has led them out of Egypt. And so it's like, there's no chance that we have to defeat them. So let's find a way to curse them. And so they reach out to him. And again, the first encounter here, they come and Balaam says, well, let me see what the Lord will say to us. Let me see if this is something God wants me to do. And he says what the Lord wants. So the name of the Lord spoken on a pagan's lips is something that is shocking. It is unusual. Now, it is not, I would not say that Balaam is a monotheistic person. He probably believed in a large spiritual council, a large spiritual realm, and knew that the people of Israel were followers of Yahweh. And so he may have been just simply using their name, of the name of their God. He may know what the Yahwistic worship looked like. And so God can speak through anybody. And we're going to see that in just a moment. But this first encounter, they're coming to say, Balaam, we're going to give you a ton of money. We're going to pay you well to come and curse these people. And God tells him, no, don't do it. The people of Israel are blessed. And so the contrast between the power of blessing and cursing, when God says he's going to bless his people, he means it. And so God is not going to allow Balaam and whatever lesser deity, lesser spirit he follows to circumvent the blessing that Yahweh has for the people of Israel. And so he says, no. So Balaam sends them away, and they go back to Balak, and he's like, okay, I'll send more important people and more money. And again, Balaam's like, we already talked about this, but I'll ask God. And in a dream in the night, somehow he gets the message to say, yes, you can go, but only do what I say. And so, Balaam is looking at a pretty fat payday here. And so he must be willing to do this because there's going to be some money involved. And so this story picks up in verse 21. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Underline that, oppose. If in a moment we'll come back to that. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, it turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat it to get it back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path through the vineyards with the walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the walls, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he beat the donkey again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn, either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat it with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, what have I done to make you beat me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? No, he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it. Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I will go back. The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went with Balak's officials. When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out and to meet him at the Moabite town of the Arnon border at the edge of his territory. Balak said to Balaam, did I not send you an urgent summons? Why didn't you come to me? Am I really not able to reward you? Well, I have come to you now, Balaam replied. He's just so sassy. I'm here now, dude. Deal with it. But I can't say whatever I'm pleased. I must speak only what God puts in my mouth. Then Balaam went with Balak to Kiriath Huzoth. Balak sacrificed cattle and sheep and gave some to Balaam and the officials who were with him. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamath Baal, and from there he could see the outskirts of the Israelite camp. All right, so this part of the story is weird. Balaam, the seer, is on his way, following after the men, the Midianite representatives, the Moabite representatives, and on the path, we see as they're going, God was angry with Balaam. And so that's confusing, right? Because God said, go, do only what I say. So why is God now angry? And I think one of the things that we need to understand is that the anger is not like, I'm mad that you're doing what I said you could do. It's more that I'm mad that you think this is okay. I'm mad that you may not do what I am saying. And so he sent, the angel of the Lord comes to really firm up Balaam's commitment to do only what God says. And so the angel of the Lord is standing there, and the seer doesn't see, but the donkey does see. And donkeys are not like majestic beasts. They're not known for being really awesome, but they are cantankerous, and they don't always do what you want. And so, like, this donkey, like, veers off the path, and Balaam's like, "How dare you?" And so he beats it. And this happens a second time, but this time crushing his foot. And then a third time, they're basically in a dead end, and the angel of the Lord is standing right there. The donkey can't turn around, and he has nothing else to do. And so he just sits down, just lays down. And then Balaam starts beating the donkey a third time. And then the weirdest part of the story, the donkey turns and says, "Why are you beating me?" And Balaam answers back. And his anger is so much, like, he doesn't stop and say, "How are you talking?" He's just like, "How dare you? And you've made a fool of me." And so here the donkey starts to speak and remind Balaam, like, "I've been good to you." And Balaam's response is, "That's true. You have been good to me." He's having this whole dialogue with his donkey. And it's not like this donkey could talk all the time. And like, there's only one other time in scripture where we see an animal speaking, and that is in the garden. The serpent speaks to Adam and Eve. That's the only time in scripture we ever see an animal talking. And then this animal is talking. The angel of the Lord enables the donkey to speak. And so here we have a soothsayer, one who brings blessings or curses, who speaks oracles for the supernatural beings. And the donkey is telling him a message that he needs to hear. And there's a couple things that we need to recognize here. God can do things that we think are impossible. And also, if God can speak through a donkey, then maybe we should lower ourselves a little bit and think maybe we're not all that great all the time. God can speak through anybody. And there are plenty of there's plenty of jokes to go around on some of the wordplay you can do with this story. But Balaam finally has his eyes opened after his conversation with the donkey to see the angel of the Lord. And the angel of the Lord says, "This donkey saved your life. And you need to do only what I tell you to do." And so Balaam recognizes, like, God is really, really doing something interesting and different here. And so Balaam must follow God's commands. And so, Balaam, as a prophet, a soothsayer, a curser, a diviner, however you want to talk about him, he knows not to mess with forces more powerful than himself. Like, the supernatural worldview of the ancient people was, there are spiritual forces at work that we should not mess with, and we should obey what they like. If God tells you to do something, you do it. And if a God can speak through a donkey, you listen to that God. And so here Balaam is recognizing Yahweh is on another level than anything else that has been going on. And so when he finally shows up, Balaam's like, "Why didn't you come sooner?" And he's like, "I'm here now." So then they have a sacrifice and they get ready. And so in chapter 23, Balaam gives some instructions. He says, "Build me 7 altars here and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me." Balak did as Balaam said, and the 2 of them offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, "Stay here beside your offering while I go aside. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet with me. Whatever he reveals to me, I will tell you." Then he went off to a barren height. God met with him, and Balaam said, "I have prepared 7 altars, and on each altar I have offered a bull and a ram." The Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth. Let me pause there. The bull and the ram, as we remember as we've been walking through the law, those are like the highest value sacrifices. And so here he's 7 altars and made 7 sacrifices on the altars, 14 animals each, are total here, 7 bulls, 7 rams. And so the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, go back to Balak and give him this word. So he went back to him and found him standing beside his offerings with all the Moabite officials. Then Balaam spoke this message. And I could just picture Balak going, all right, here comes a cursing. And so Balaam says this: Balak brought me from Aram, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come, he said, curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced? From the rocky peaks, I see them. From the heights, I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number even a fourth of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs. Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I brought you here to curse my enemies, but you have done nothing but bless them. He answered, must I not speak what the Lord puts in my mouth? So this isn't exactly what Balak was hoping for. And instead, instead of a curse, the Lord speaks through Balaam a blessing over the people. And there's a couple things to note. The first is, Balaam can't go against what God says. If they're blessed, they're blessed. I can't undenounce somebody who's been denounced. And so he has to do whatever the Lord says. But then also, these are people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nation. And so here, the nation of Israel is recognized as distinct from others. They are special in God's sight. And so Balaam is doing the work of the Lord here. And this isn't like a dream or a vision. Somehow God met with Balaam. That's what the text says. He met with him. There's one other person that we see in this narrative so far with the people of Israel that God meets with, and that is Moses. And so we kind of get a counter Moses here. Balaam, as a pagan who is trying to curse the people, God can even use him. And Moses, who is God's chosen person to lead the people out of Egypt. And so we have these two people who speak for God in the book of Numbers, and both of them are speaking blessings for the people of Israel. And Balak again gets upset. What have you done? I brought you here to curse them. Why are you blessing them? And Balaam says again, you know what? I can't do what God didn't tell me to do. So this is what it is. Balak does not give up. Then Balak said to him, come with me to another place where you can see them. You will not see them all, but only the outskirts of the camp. And from there, curse them for me. So he took him to a field of Zopharim on the top of Pisgah. And there he built 7 altars and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Balak said, stay here beside your offering while I meet with him over there. The Lord met with Balaam and put a word in his mouth. Go back to Balak and give him this word. And so we have a similar situation. Balak is doing the offerings, the sacrifices, trying to honor, trying to get the deity's attention here. And Balaam, he's like, well, maybe you just need to see a different angle. Maybe that angle was particularly strong, blessed. Maybe over here, this other side of the camp, you can sneak in a curse that way, because Balak is dumb. And so, verse 17, so we went to him and found him standing beside his offering with the Moabite officials. Balak asked him, what did the Lord say? Then he spoke this message, arise, Balak, and listen. Hear me, son of Zippor. God is not human that he should lie, not a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? I have received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot change it. No misfortune is seen in Jacob, no misery observed in Israel. The Lord their God is with them. The shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt, and they have the strength of a wild ox. There is no divination against Jacob, no evil omens against Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and of Israel, see what God has done. The people rise like a lioness. They rouse themselves like a lion that does not rest till it devours its prey and drinks the blood of its victims. Then Balak said to Balaam, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. Balaam answered, did I not tell you? I must do whatever the Lord says. And so here again, instead of a curse, we get a blessing. And the key element here is that the Lord, their God, is with them. The Lord is his presence is the blessing. His presence is what is giving them power and enables them to overcome their enemies. It's God among them that has done these things. And as it continues on, thinking about Israel and it says, see what God has done. All the miracles in the Exodus account, all the provision, all the military battles that the people of Israel are experiencing and where they're winning, it all comes back to see what God has done. So the seer, Balaam, he did not see the angel of the Lord, the donkey did, but then he saw, and now he's telling Balak to see what God has done. And I told you earlier to underline the word oppose him in the message with this passage with the angel of the Lord. And I just realized I didn't say why. The word there in Hebrew is the same word from which we get Satan. Satan, Hasatan, is the noun. Satan is a verb form of that. And so the angel of the Lord is serving as an adversary. I'm not saying that the angel of the Lord in that moment is Satan. I'm just saying he is an adversary against Balaam in that moment. And when we think about Satan, Satan is our adversary. Look to the book of Job. Satan is the accuser, the adversary against Job, trying to find some fault in him. And so now the Lord has sent the angel of the Lord to oppose Balaam, to get his attention and to help him see that he must stay true to what God has told him to say and do. So that's what's happening here. And so Balak is urged to listen to Balaam. And remember, God does not change his mind. He will not bring a curse on his people because Balak asked him to. And so Balak is basically like, if you can't say anything mean, don't say anything at all. And he's frustrated with Balaam, but Balaam is not done with his words because and Balak is like, well, let's try it one more time. Third time's a charm. Balak said to Balaam, come, let me take you to another place. Perhaps it will please God to let you curse them from there. And Balak took Balaam to the top of Peor, overlooking the wasteland. Balaam said, build me 7 altars here and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me. Balak did as Balaam had said and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Chapter 24. Now, when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not resort to divination as at other times, but turned his face to the wilderness. When Balaam looked out and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came on him, and he spoke this message. The prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, the prophecy of one whose eyes see clearly, the prophecy of one who hears the words of God, who sees a vision from the Almighty, and who falls prostrate, and whose eyes are opened. How beautiful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Like valleys, they spread out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. Water will flow from their buckets. Their seed will have abundant water. Their king will be greater than Agag. Their kingdom will be exalted. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. They devour hostile nations and break their bones in pieces. With their arrows, they pierce them. Like a lion, they crouch and lie down. Like a lioness who dares to rouse them. May those who bless you be blessed, and those who curse you be cursed. Then Balak's anger burned against Balaam. He struck his hands together and said to him, I summoned you to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them these 3 times. Now leave at once and go home. I said I would reward you handsomely, but the Lord has kept you from being rewarded. Balaam answered Balak, did I not tell the messengers you sent me? Even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything of my own accord, good or bad, to go beyond the command of the Lord. And I must say only what the Lord says. Now I am going back to my people. But come, let me warn you of what this people will do to you, to your people in the days to come. And so here, Balaam, again, take take Balaam to another spot. Maybe that's a better angle for cursing. Again, Balak is dumb, and Balaam gives an even greater blessing. Like they're going to be prosperous. They're going to be like aloes, which are medicinal, like healing other people, like cedars, they're strong rooted trees. Water will flow from them and be a blessing to those around them. All these things are so wonderful. And then it also says their king will be greater than Agag. And we don't have a king yet in the narrative so far in the books of up to Numbers. Then Agag is actually one of the Amalekite kings that Saul fights with. Agag is the king that Saul was supposed to kill, and he didn't. And so here we have a little note that a king is coming for the people of Israel who will be greater than Agag. And this could be a prophecy to pointing to that day, or Agag could be a name of the family kings in the lines of the Amalekites. It could be one of those. Either way, a king is coming, and right now for the people of Israel, there is no king. And so there's a future telling here that's coming. And then again, God brought them out of Egypt. They have God's power is working with them, and they are going to consume and destroy the nations that oppose them. These are powerful blessings that Balaam is speaking, and he's only speaking what the Lord is telling him to speak. And so in these three oracles, blessings for the people of Israel, if we go back a little bit, the donkey saw the angel of the Lord 3 times, and now the Lord reveals to Balaam the blessings 3 times for the people of Israel. So these kinds of patterns and repeating things, those are something to pay attention to. We should note, like, if God can use Balaam or Balaam's donkey, God can use Balaam. And so he is committed to saying only what the Lord says to say. And Balak is not happy with this. And he's like, I'm not going to pay you. You're going to have to just go home on your own time. You're not even going to get bus fare back. Get out of here. And Balaam's like, well, since I'm here, let me tell you what God is showing me that these people are going to do to you and to the neighboring nations. And so the Balaam speaks again. Verse 15, then he spoke his message. The prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, the prophecy of one whose eyes see clearly, the prophecy of one who hears the words of God and who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate and whose eyes are open. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of all the people of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seir, his enemy, will be conquered. But Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. And so here we have a foretelling of the glory of the coming king, a star out of Jacob, and a scepter that will rise, and he will lead the people, and he will defeat the enemies of God's people. Now, this is, potentially looking to the monarchy that will be established. That, Saul defeated God's enemies. David will defeat God's enemies. The nation will expand under Solomon, and so this divinely appointed Davidic monarchy, this could be the star, but there could also be a little bit of a future telling of this could be the Messiah. This could be Jesus. And, one of the people that I was listening to talking about this passage this last week, he just was like, remember now, the people of where Balaam's coming from is the east, right? The north and the east, the land of Babylon. And here Balaam is saying a star will come. Now, hundreds of years in the future from this event, the people of Israel will be taken into exile, and they will go to Babylon because of their disobedience. And while they're in Babylon, there will be a prophet of the Lord, Daniel, who is a seer, who will carry on the message of of the Lord to the people, but also Daniel was the chief seer in Babylon as a servant of Yahweh. He was like the head of the guys, like, and so he probably taught them and explained to them why the people of Israel are distinct, why the people of Israel live differently from the other nations, and also this hope. Maybe he even said, we had a prophet come and try to speak against us, Balaam, who told us that a star was coming of a coming king who will defeat the enemies of God's people. Fast forward from Daniel's life, hundreds of years, about 500 years. And what happens? Wise men from the east see a star. Wise men from Babylon, they see a star in the heavens. And maybe they said, this is the star that Balaam talked about. This is the star that Daniel told us about. We must see this king. And so they travel to see the king, and you can read the rest in the book of Matthew. But these stars and this message of a coming king is something that, we see hinted at throughout the history of Israel, but we see a fulfillment of the good, perfect king in Jesus. But we also still are living in the tension of the already, but the not yet, because the enemies of God's people are still around. And so there's a day coming when Jesus will ultimately defeat the enemies of God's people. And we have not seen that yet. In the meantime, we tell people about the goodness of Jesus and the grace of Jesus so that they become the family of God through Jesus, so they're no longer enemies of God's people. That's what we're about. And so, we've seen these things, and we must do what the Lord tells us to do. Balaam, who was reluctant, who did not want to go, God said, go, but do only what I say. And now here we, as followers of Jesus, are we willing to say, if God can use a donkey, if God can use Balaam, God can use me, because I'm at least following Jesus. So this is part of what's going on here. There's a bigger vision than the moment with the nation of Israel that he's looking to. There's something in the future, but he's not done. There's more messages. The fifth message, Balaam saw Amalek and spoke his message. Amalek was first among the nations, but their end will be the utter destruction. And the Amalekites were the people that the people of Israel fought them in Exodus 17. This is the story of the Aaron and Moses holding his staff up, and as long as he's holding the staff up, the Israelites are winning. They were really the first nation that the people of Israel fought after escaping from the Exodus, or from Egypt. And so that's what that means by first among the nations. But the Amalekites were also very old, and so there's some of their history. But even the Amalekites, who seem like they're going to be forever, they're temporary. The sixth message, then he saw the Kenites and spoke his message. Your dwelling place is secure. Your nest is set in a rock. Yet you Kenites will be destroyed when Ashur takes you captive. And so the Kenites live in the mountains. And so they have, dug in fortification in the mountains. And so like, we're fine here. Nobody can take us. But there's this nation Ashur. And that's one of the questions is, who is Ashur? Are they talking about the Assyrians? Is that like an early form of Assyrians? And eventually the Assyrians will come through this land and take the northern tribes of Israel and take a lot of people in the region out of the land and into captivity. And so the Kenites are, they are being warned of their coming destruction. And the Kenites may have been part of this group of nations that are coming with Moab and the Midianites and the Kenites and the Amalekites. Like they may have all made this coalition to try to curse the people of Israel through Balaam. So now the seventh message, then he spoke this message: alas, who can live when God does this? Ships will come from the shores of Cyprus. They will subdue Ashur and Eber, but they too will come to ruin. Then Balaam got up and returned home, and Balak went on his own way. And so we have these Ashur, maybe the Assyrians coming through, taking people into captivity, but then there's people coming from the sea. So, and the Greek invasion of this land would happen after the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Persians. The Greeks came, and so they would have been coming from the sea, from Cyprus area, like is what it would have felt like. And so there's even that foretelling that there is another kingdom that will come and wipe out other people. And all these nations who think that they're going to have the last laugh over the people of Israel, they will be wiped out, is what these messages are. And so then Balaam's like, and that's it. Drop the mic and head out of there. And so before he leaves, though, this is the closing of the book of Balaam. But chapter 25 shows us that Moab is still able to corrupt the people of Israel. And later on in Numbers 31, verse 8, we will, and Joshua 13:22, we'll see that Balaam actually counseled them to try to seduce the people of Israel into sexual activities and idolatrous practices with the temple prostitutes of the Moabites. And so when we read chapter 25 here, we should keep in mind that this may have been Balaam's idea based on later verses in the book of Numbers and in the book of Joshua. So let's jump to 25, and I will read the whole chapter, and then we'll talk about it. While Israel was staying in Shittim, the men began to indulge in sexual immorality with the Moabite women, who invited them to the sacrifices of their gods. The people ate at the sacrificial meal and bowed down before these gods. So Israel yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor, and the Lord's anger burned against them. The Lord said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of these people, kill them, and expose them in broad daylight before the Lord, so the Lord's fierce anger may turn away from Israel." So Moses said to Israel's judges, "Each of you must put to death those of your people who have yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor." Then an Israelite man brought into the camp a Midianite woman right before the eyes of Moses and the whole assembly of Israel, while they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, took a spear in his hand, and followed the Israelite into the tent. He drove the spear into both of them, right through the Israelite man and into the woman's stomach. Then the plague against the Israelites was stopped. But those who died in the plague numbered 24,000. The Lord said to Moses, "Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned my anger away from the Israelites, since he was zealous for my honor among them. As I did not put an end to them in my zeal. Therefore, tell him I am making my covenant of peace with him. He and his descendants will have a covenant of a lasting priesthood, because he was zealous for the honor of his God and made atonement for the Israelites." The name of the Israelite who was killed with the Midianite woman was Zimri, son of Salu, the leader of the Simeonite family. And the name of the Midianite woman who was put to death was Cosbi, daughter of Zur, the tribal chief of the Midianite family. The Lord said to Moses, "Treat the Midianites as enemies and kill them. They treated you as enemies when they deceived you in the Peor incident involving their sister Cosbi, the daughter of the Midianite leader, the woman who was killed when the plague came as a result of that incident." So the people remember, they defeated a kingdom, and they started to move in to their homes, into their settlements, but there are still people around. And so the Moabite women, who are most likely temple prostitutes, they start to seduce the men to be a part of worshiping the Baal of Peor, which is Baal or Baal, is a word for Lord in the Canaanite religion. And so it's the god of Peor. And so they are yoking themselves to this practice. And a yoke is a agricultural tool. They yoke two animals together to pull the plow, right? Excuse me. And so they're doing that and essentially saying, like, we are with them now, and God is furious, and like the anger of the Lord starts burning against them. And there's a plague that comes, but then also the Lord commands Moses to execute all the people who are participating in this idolatrous worship. And, so this is a heavy word, and the people are weeping and like, do we really have to do this? This is awful. And while this is happening, Zimri brings a prostitute into his family's tent right in front of everybody. He's like, I don't care what you say. I'm going to do what I want to do. And so Phineas handles it. He goes in and stabs them through. And Phineas and his zeal for the ways of the Lord reveal, Phineas becomes a prominent leader in the future. Phineas's descendants are the line through whom the high priesthood is going to flow. But his actions there stop the plague. And this, again, all of this, like we'll see in a couple of weeks, was suggested by Balaam. Balaam couldn't go and seek a word from the Lord and then tell them something else. He's only going to tell them what the Lord told them to say. But Balaam also, didn't seek the Lord and said, look, I know how people are, and I know how men are. And if we tempt these men, they will fall. And that's probably the best way to fight the people of Israel. It's not through your military might. It's through temptation. And Balaam was right. But the Lord relented, and the Lord turned them away from that path in this moment, as Phineas was zealous for God's ways. And so this ends the books of Balaam, or the book of Balaam in the book of Numbers. And so we'll come back to next week looking at a census, because we know they're coming into the land of promise. And we had a census at the beginning of the book of Numbers. How many people are there? And we're going to look to now, as they're about to go into the promised land, they're going to count again. And we'll see that some tribes grew, some tribes shrunk. And so this is so that's the conclusion of the book of Balaam. So any questions on Numbers 22 through 25? No questions? Oh man.
Not really.
A weird passage.
I don't really have a question. The first thing when I thought of star was the Star of David.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what the origins of the Star of David are. I've actually never looked into that. But yeah, I don't know if they would have used Balaam's message as the one to hold on to there for national identity. But
I hope not.
Yeah. All right. So no thoughts, no questions, nothing. All right, you guys, this was a fun one. Yeah, I would love to.
Sorry.
What?
I wish it would explain a little bit more about the different, like the Kenites and all that, who they were, then where they were located.
Yeah, well, the Kenites were in the hills around. I do have, I think, some of that information already in my notes. The Kenites lived in the dry, hilly country southwest of the Dead Sea. They were pretty close to the Amalekites. So they were generally on good terms with the people of Israel, but, as they are, coming into the promised land, the people of Israel are a threat to all of their neighbors. And so they're lumped in with the Kenites. So, but those hills around the Dead Sea. Like it's very mountainous, not like our mountains, but hilly and narrow ravines, and a lot of crags and areas that you can hide in. And so that was where they were putting their confidence. So the who else? The Amalekites were also towards the south there. The Amalekites, the Kenites, and really the Moabites are the only ones that we are looking at here. So, yeah.
Is it close to Petra?
Um,
Or where's the location of Petra?
Petra is in Jordan,
Yeah.
the nation of Jordan, and so it would be kind of similar to that area. So if you don't know what Petra is, if you've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, they go into there's a little city that's carved out of the hillside, out of the rock, the cliffside there. That's Petra. And so like that is that's a famous place that is would have been a people like the Kenites or who made that, knowing that the ravine is a secure place. You can't like bring a vast army into there. You've got natural pinch points on both sides of the ravine that will give you the advantage to fight against any of those invaders. So, yeah.
Who actually lived in Petra? It's legit, right?
It's a real place. Yeah. I don't know off the top of my head who lived in Petra. So let me see. Let's fire up the old Google machine.
Told me there was some way to find out.
I'm going to make sure that it is not the band Petra. That's beyond belief.
No.
So, and you have the 80s Christian music people here. City of.
Is that like Striper?
It is like Striper. Yeah.
Older is hard rock as Striper was.
Yeah. Who built this place?
Yeah, good question. Who built Petra then?
The area around Petra has been inhabited from as early as 7000 BC, and the Nabateans might have settled in what would become the capital city of their kingdom as it was 4th century BC. So the Nabateans, and then you say, this is the danger of Wikipedia. All these links, and you're like, well, who are the Nabateans? Let's find out. The Nabateans were an ancient Arab people who inhabited northern Arabia and southern Levant. Their settlements most prominently assumed the capital city of Rakhmu, present-day Petra, Jordan, gave them the name Nabatene to the Arabian borderland. It stretched to the Euphrates and the Red Sea. So they were, so Arabic descent people. So, yeah, I love Wikipedia. And people are like, you can't trust Wikipedia. Let me show you what Petra looks like. I'm going to share a screen with you. This is why I trust Wikipedia, because the nerds who care the most are the ones doing the editing. So they're going to get it right. All right. So this is the Wikipedia article. So like you can see the some of these pictures of the cliffside cut in here in Petra. And then this is in Israel. I don't know why they included that picture for this, but I wonder if there's any more pictures. There, yeah, you've got this like the ornate carving here in the rocks. That's pretty impressive stuff. Yeah. So this is the Mediterranean Sea here, and this red area is where Petra is located. Yeah, cool. All right. Any other thoughts or questions? There we go. Stop.
It always amazes me in the Bible when animals start talking, the humans that are with them don't react like this is out of the ordinary. Like when the serpent is talking to Adam and Eve, they just talk back to him conversationally. Right. And same with Balaam. It's not a like what is happening here. It's continuing the conversation. So
Yeah.
I just thought that really interesting. I
Yeah,
would love
he's,
for
he's reasoning with the donkey.
right.
Like, haven't I been good to you? It's like, yeah, good point.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I get it. But yeah. One of the classes that one of the lectures I had when I was at Youth with a Mission talked about what the world was like before the fall. And the reason, like, we don't know a whole lot about how long Adam and Eve were in the garden before Eve was tempted. And where Cain's wife came from and all that. So one of the theories about what life was like before the fall was that humans could talk to animals, because that was part of the stewardship of the land. Taking care of the land was also taking care of these animals, and that was the reason that the serpent was able to communicate and not surprise Eve. So and
that is a possibility.
And the hope
But
is that when the new heaven and new earth, when we're restored to heaven, that ability to speak to our pets or animals or whatever will be restored.
maybe. I can't
It's
confirm
all
or
wild
deny.
speculation at
Yeah,
this
it's all
point.
speculation.
I think
Yeah.
my dog's already trying to do that.
Yeah. My dogs definitely try to talk to me. Sure.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things too. Like, one of the questions that people had about Balaam and the donkey is, did the donkey talk like in a way that Balaam like clearly understood it, or was the donkey braying like a donkey does, and the Lord gave Balaam the gift of interpretation to understand what the donkey was saying? I don't know. Somehow, like, the Numbers doesn't try to explain it at all. It's just like, this happened.
Yeah.
So go on with your day. It's like, what? So yeah, it's such a weird, strange story.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's just matter of fact. Imagine if you talk like Eeyore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
That would be great. I'm gonna probably now read this story the rest of my life with an Eeyore voice. Haven't I been a good donkey to you? So we'll see.
That's amazing.
We'll see. Yeah.
One
Any
question.
other thoughts on this chunk of scripture?
Well, my head is
Oh.
still reeling from the fact that all these other different cultures had all their different gods. It's like, where did they come up with this? Boggles my mind.
Yeah. Well, there was a greater appreciation of the spiritual realm in the ancient world.
Yeah.
And people were much more open to spirit beings than our day. And so, if these fallen angels, these demons, are speaking to people or speaking through people, then that's a spectacular event, and they probably started from there. So yeah, but it is a different world than what we live in, where we have our world is prone to skepticism. The ancient world was much more prone to faith in the supernatural. So yeah. All right. Well, y'all, next week we have a census, so it'll be fun. There's going to be some counting, but we'll keep going. We'll keep moving forward. Numbers gets a bad rap for people think it's all numbers, but it's not. There's really cool stuff like this passage. So we'll come back together next week, and y'all have a good night and I'll see most of you Sunday, I hope. And it's good to see you, Sandy. And hope you're doing better.
Not really.
No.
Well, we'll keep praying. for you.
Keep on. Keep on.
All right. All right, everyone. Well, have a good night, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.